Let me hear you give it up if you like physical product. All right. That's a good thing since we're all analog beings, right? So obviously my name is Israel Vasquitelli. I'm the department chair for the music business program. And without further ado, please help me welcome the COO of Big Machine Label Group, Andrew Kautz. And the VP of Global Marketing for the Disney Music Group, Mr. Souriall.
You're in the hot seat.
You have waters here, I know it's...
I'm good.
All right. I have to start, if we're going to talk about physical products, I know you're a fan of Kiss.
I am a fan of Kiss, rock band, yes.
Are they not the undisputed kings of physical music products?
They absolutely are, and my staff will attest to the fact in my office I have this, it's called Kissteria. It's an anvil, like a road case, like you take on tour, and it has every album they've ever released on vinyl, and it came with all this other amazing stuff, and they only made 1,000 of them, and there's like a signed certificate, and boy, when that came out, I'm like, I need that. Of course, my wife was like, no, you don't. But somehow I got one.
Can I ask you what the retail price was?
$1,700.
Wow. So let's talk about that for a moment. I mean, we're in an environment, once upon a time, it was about the mass-produced product. It was about the vinyl record, it was about the CD or the audio cassette, the CD, the DVD. Clearly, we still have those formats, surprisingly enough, even the cassette.
But by the way, we had the #1 selling cassette in the past decade with the Guardians of the Galaxy mixtape Volume 1. Sorry to interrupt.
I bought that, by the way. I have that. So, today, it's really more so about the format, if you will, no more mass-produced formats. Instead, I think it's more so about having a product that kind of fits everybody's commitment on every spectrum of consumers. So you have the folks clearly that, maybe you'll stream a song, or maybe they're listening to it out of curiosity because it's a spectacle, a viral video online, right? And then we have the digital download for a song and the album download, and some folks still buy CDs, and then we get into the deluxe packages and things like the Kiss Super Box Set. If you don't mind talking a little bit about maybe some of your experiences in that space with your prospective companies and how you've approached this new model of kind of tiering products based on commitment.
You want me to start?
Sure.
I think you summed it up very well. I mean, we're definitely in a business now of making sure we're offering our music anywhere and everywhere. And the good news is consumers are engaging with music in more ways than they ever have. So when I hear people talk about the industry is dead, it bums me out. And I love coming to a place like this because I see a bunch of young people getting into the industry, and I want to encourage you because the industry is not dead. There's always going to be a need for great music attached to great entertainment. It's just the model is changing. So we're everywhere with our products. We're in the mass retailers, Walmart, Target. When we can, we're in, well, I guess Starbucks is gone now, but we get into the non-trads occasionally too. We're in all the streaming services. We've taken a pretty aggressive approach where we're not holding things back, which I know some other people, and rightfully so, are choosing to do that. I think we're all realizing we have to get out of the freemium streaming business into the premium quicker than it's happening. And then to your point on what's becoming big business for us is direct to consumer. And so one of my big initiatives this past year was creating sort of my field of dreams, if you will, for upscale, high-end collectible Disney audio products. And so it's called DisneyMusicEmporium.com. And it is now our e-commerce destination and fan engagement site where I can sell products that Walmart's never going to carry, Target's never going to be able to make the price point carry, and I can create an engaged fan community of people who are telling me, I love Disney music, I want to know about everything you guys are doing, who are signing up, and through socials, we're now having a two-way conversation with them. And we're seeing some great success with it early on. And what's great is now I have a destination, so all of my marketing muscle that I put into this offer and this offer and this offer, it's all going to the same place. And so people are starting to realize, okay, this is the home for all things amazing Disney music collectible.
Awesome. And clearly, I mean, there's a lot of legacy properties in the Disney catalog. So I would imagine there's a lot of opportunity there.
More than I can keep up with,
Right.
yeah. And it's, we're finding too, what's great about it is, sometimes we as record labels will find a surplus of some product that for whatever reason didn't move. So we had 1,000 Tron Legacy vinyl LPs that we created in Europe. And for whatever reason, they ended up in a warehouse and somebody caught onto it. And so we put those on Disney Music Emporium, and with one tweet and post, we blew through all 1,000 of those in 48 hours. That Guardians of the Galaxy mixtape, we had some of those. I've gone through 3,000 of those in literally 4 days.
Wow.
And so it's definitely a trend in the industry of super serving your Uber fan. And there's fans of all kinds. There's some fans who only have $13.98 to throw down at Walmart because they just want to consume the physical or they stream. But there's other fans who want something extra special and an extra badge of honor that represents who their brand is through music. And they're willing to pay a lot more money for something special. So it gets us out of the business that we struggle with, which is Walmart, that we have to sell 100,000 units at $7 to try and make the revenue and the profit margin work. But you could flip that around, and now I can sell 20,000 units at $40
Right.
and make equal, if not more money. So it's a different business model, but what it also does is it really puts the attention on your super fans, which is something I think as an industry we kind of got away from for a while. Obviously, there's certain artists who are just great at it, but for our company, it's definitely a new focus.
And do you think it was, in many ways, just as an industry as a whole, kind of like the luxury of not having to focus on that diehard fan because you had this mass-produced product that was going to sell?
It's also just the technology and the ability to reach that Uber fan, pull them into a community, and give them a place where they can make decisions on, I want this package, this package, this package, this package. You couldn't do that in traditional retail before, or at least in the past 15 years,
Yeah,
there hasn't been a place for it.
Retail has always kind of been that. Our customer has always been that retail marketer. So we sell to Walmart, to Target, and that then they resell it to the customer. So we haven't really had that direct fan relationship. And a lot of these new products and the ability for us to actually market straight to the fans and the direct to customer is a huge opportunity for us. One, not only just to know who our customer is and anything streaming, we talked about that. The other advantage of streaming is knowing your customer. I mean, the data that comes with streaming allows us to recognize who that is and what their tastes are, what their preferences are. Before, you'd sell product and it'd just be kind of this blind, did it move or did it not move? And you didn't know why. And so the other thing is the artificial price point. I mean, when we just had one release and before deluxes became popular, you had the choice of selling it to Walmart at a discounted price or not, or them not buying it. And so the differentiation of the price structure of a deluxe version for the Uber fan and the standard version for the price conscious, that they might not see a value in, Walmart might not see a value in have fewer tracks. They've got their version of it, but what we're finding is retail has always priced for their customer base as opposed to our customer base. And now that we're starting to see price stratification that in iTunes and especially with deluxe packages, people are willing to spend more money. It was always an artificial thought. I mean, there's no reason that one of our best-selling artists should be a 99-cent single is the same as the brand new artist that doesn't have a fan base. There should be some price differentiation. Ringtones were a really interesting thought into that. I mean, we were selling 15 seconds of a song for $2.50, almost $3, and people were buying it. It was one of the biggest booms, but yet the whole song was 99 cents, so it's kind of crazy.
Indeed, and despite all of the woes that we hear about on a regular basis regarding the music industry, I mean, I would imagine that it's liberating to know that you can price something at a price point that fan is willing to pay, as opposed to just a standardized, homogenized, on-the-shelf price point.
Absolutely, and it's creating value. It's putting value back in music. I think that was one of the issues that we had is when the industry made this shift to digital, it basically took we're at a crossroads where we had really high quality audio and digital was growing, and we had the choice to do HD audio, and we went with a 128 MP3 because it was good enough and it would fit down the pipe, the delivery pipe. And then we took away the lyrics, and we took away the booklet, and we took away all that, and just made this very, I guess, just stripped down, homogenized version of our music, and it wasn't an experience anymore. And I think we have an entire generation that's now starting to realize, and that same generation would spend $100 for a concert ticket for the experience. And so from our industry standpoint, we're trying to put value back into that and create packages that people want to own, that they want to see different covers, different things like that, collectibles. People do want to connect with their music. You just have to give them something to buy that triggers that.
Indeed, and to my dismay, I remember there was a little window of time where the majors in particular were releasing, it was short-lived, but they were releasing full-length albums in sleeves, just a cardboard sleeve, and on the back it had a little note that said, if you want the liner notes, download it at, and right. I'm like, okay, why are people paying for this? I don't know. By the way, congratulations to both of you on you guys have the biggest records last year, both 1989 and Frozen. So please give it up.
They definitely set the benchmark to the target. So, did you feel that target right there on your back?
Thank you.
And I think what some folks might find surprising, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but based on what I've seen, 60% approximately of those album sales are still coming from the physical product. Is that the case?
Absolutely.
You've done your homework, yes.
Indeed. So talk to me a little bit about that. What is it about and now we're talking about CDs, so we're not talking about, the extra super fan bundle. Mm-hmm. So what do you think it is? I mean, so many people have written it off. So what do you think it is about, just the old-fashioned CD that people are still getting behind it when it comes to a full-length album versus downloading?
I think a big part of it is the season that we released a lot in fourth quarter, and in that fourth quarter there's Thanksgiving and Black Friday and Christmas, and there's a huge gifting. It's really hard to gift a digital album. It's really hard to gift a stream. Whereas when somebody really wants something and something special, a lot of times it's the parents or somebody giving that as a gift, and physical is still that tangible thing that you wrap up and you put under the tree, put in the stocking, and digital just doesn't have that same reaction. When they get a digital record, it's like,
It's underwhelming.
Yeah, it's underwhelming.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, talk to me a little bit about that. I mean, how much of it is gifting? And if that's the case, then I would imagine the ultimate gift of music is always going to resonate. I mean, do you think there's always going to be a space for that as far as commerce goes in music?
We definitely do. I mean, we're very unique in that most of our products on the Disney side that are very family targeted, and of course Frozen is very broad and mainstream. And mom and grandma and aunts and uncles are still living in the Targets and Walmarts of the world, and as long as we do our job to position them right at the checkout and along with the music section and special end caps, I do think a lot of it is a bit of a nag factor, spontaneous. Oh my God, Mom, Dad, there's that album I want. And especially on the Walt Disney Records side of our business, we will probably last longer than any of the labels in this format by virtue of that.
Yeah.
That's where the consumer is shopping. And he's right, it's a ton of gifting, and of course, Easter and Christmas are really our two big windows where on the family music side we see a ton of volume.
And a lot of it, I would imagine, is also the physical. I mean, we're talking about platforms online, but the physical sales are still clearly relevant for physical products.
Yeah, and it's also a big part of the genre that you're listening to. Country, which is kind of our niche, if you will, is still a very physical format. It's still it's going to be the not the first to adopt the new technology, but it's given us a little more of a long tail on our business, and so there's still a huge customer base out there. And as you look at different genres, there is a huge difference in the physical some of the more urban and R&B and things like that are very skewed digital and singles based.
Yeah.
Indeed. If you don't mind sharing with us some examples of non-traditional retail that you found success. So, for example, I mean, Walgreens on both releases' behalf. I remember, as a matter of fact, I think it was Red, where they had a Taylor Swift store at Walgreens. And I think pretty much on every visit to Walgreens, I always see Frozen right by in the POP section.
Right.
So if you don't mind sharing maybe some of those retail spaces that aren't necessarily obvious, you know, the Best Buys and maybe even record stores, that you found some success selling these products.
Well, I think we learned a lot with the Walgreens. You know, our thought was is if we could just get it in front of people, but I think you also have to identify places that people are ready to buy music. And I think Check Lane and some of those other things, and some of the more traditional places where people are shopping or doing other things, Walgreens isn't, you know, although it was an amazing success for us from a marketing perspective, it didn't move the number of units that we had hoped. And the other logistical nightmare is that you know, Target has 1,700 stores. You know, Walmart has what, 1,400. Walgreens has 8,000 stores. So if you're just trying to think about, you know, you're going to have at least 10 units in each store, the number of units you're going to have to ship into that location, and then returns as well. That's the downside of physical is you want to be able to maintain your inventory, and so you always want to have you want to keep track of where product is moving and keep those stocked, and where product isn't moving, you don't. And Walgreens doesn't necessarily have that mechanism in place to be able to keep your just-in-time inventory. The other thing we did was the Papa John's, which was another really great marketing approach, where, you know, we had the red cover on top of, you know, the pizza box, and you could order your pizza and have a Taylor Swift pizza party and get the CD delivered at the same time. And, you know, it didn't move an unusual amount of units, but it definitely was a great marketing approach to drive awareness, and it was a big piece of our rollout.
It's a big logistical nightmare. You're a food retailer, and suddenly you got to train people on what to do with this box of CDs. But yeah, visibly the awareness, and it was genius. I love that.
And security was the hard part. Is that, you know, people don't realize is that, you know, we try to keep all of our product completely under wraps and not in stores until the day, the street date. But when you're dealing with 8,000 locations and all these employees, it's really hard to tell them, please don't put this out until Tuesday, you know. But yet they need it on Thursday, and so trying to time delivery of all of your product worldwide to hit a 3-day delivery window is a lot of logistical nightmare, but it's worth it if you can make it happen.
Frozen was just such a mega hit, and I should preface any conversations I have about Frozen, I have to, of course, state that I have the luxury and the privilege of having a massive film platform behind a property. You guys don't have that with an artist like Taylor, but it's clearly a competitive advantage to who we are and the way that we do business, and it insulates us a little bit. So we can't take credit for all of Frozen, of course. But Frozen opened up so many doors just within the logistics of our company and the way that we're a licensed model ex-US, and we work through Universal, same as you guys do. But even in the US, I mean, we got product into Bed Bath & Beyond, which is just insane and nuts. But to your point, again, it's a product they're not used to selling, they're not used to racking. So it was great because we actually moved almost 100,000 units through those doors. But you are right, too. I think it has to make sense in the right place, and a shopper has to be in the right mind. Honestly, I think by the time we got it into Bed Bath & Beyond, and we've been working this project for 1.5 years now, I think moms are kind of already like, enough already. Everywhere I go, I see this. Please, now I'm going in to buy some soap and a towel, and here's the Frozen album, you know. But yeah, we had a bunch of just, you know, opportunities that we've never had with other products before with Frozen.
Awesome. And clearly, once upon a time, it was about shipping product everywhere, right? And today, I would imagine that luxury isn't there, right? It's about picking the right places at the right time. Maybe even some of the chains, you know, may not have the same amount of product across the board. If you could talk a little bit about that, the decisions and how you go about making those decisions as to where that product goes? Is it a lot of historical data? What goes into that?
It's a very complicated process, but it's a ton of just historical information. I mean, our head of sales marketing interactive, Kelly Rich, she's been doing it for forever. She started at Anderson and Amarillo and worked through, and she knows all of the buyers and works directly with every single one of the buyers and works with our distributor Universal. But the relationships that we have of only shipping the product, we historically as a company have not overshipped. And I don't know if you know the return rate is one of the biggest things. So our historical return rate as a company is 5%.
Wow.
Which is pretty substantially low compared to an industry standard, and that's because we try not to burn any retailers. And some of the bigger record labels, they have to get product in and overship, to make a number for a quarter, where we ship what's needed. And but that's always a real hard process to maintain that inventory level, because our physical retail distribution channels have just been decimated over the years by just the cost structure. They're trying to do more with less people, and I personally think that if there were to be a company that came along and did physical right, with really truly some great just-in-time inventory and some management and people that actually could rack product in a timely manner, you can't sell something that's not on the racks. And I think that's our number one complaint. We get calls all the time. I'm in the store and I cannot find your product. And you look it up and there's 12 units, but it's in the back room. Right. And so it's literally calling the store and saying, can you bring the 12 units you have in the back room and put it on the shelf? And that simple process, and you take that times 1,700 stores, and it's and we only have a certain amount of product, so it's easier for us. I mean, it's like we got 12 titles or 7 titles that need to be out, and we're calling on that. But for some of the majors, and especially Disney, I mean, trying to keep that product in place is the difficult part, because the CD might be what's bringing somebody into the store. I mean, it's a loss leader for a lot of retail, but they're more interested in stocking Tide or stocking all the other things, because that's what we're competing with.
And you mentioned Bed Bath & Beyond. I would imagine, as you alluded to, someone isn't necessarily going there specifically to buy the Frozen soundtrack. However, if it's strategically placed, you have that opportunity for an impulse buy. If you don't mind talking a little bit about the importance of that, strategizing places where that product is just going to happen to be in front of that consumer at the right price at the right time, and that transaction is going to happen.
Well, one example I can think of, we work closely with our retailers to try and identify the right high traffic visibility areas in the store. And it's the dream when you can get out of department placement somewhere. And so on the Disney side, we do so much in the preschool, young children music space. So Target's an example of where we worked with them to collaborate on creating an end cap that is positioned right by the sort of preschool baby section, so that mom is there and she's shopping and she turns the corner and, oh, look at all this music, and my daughter watches all these shows on Disney Junior. So there is a science to being in the right place at the right time to incur that purchase. We benefit too, being part of a studio system and a huge consumer products team. We have an integrated sales team that works together to think about, okay, we have a soundtrack, we have a DVD, Blu-ray, we have merchandise. Let's put it all together into a thematic display, and we have a little bit of leverage to do things like that, which again is a competitive advantage that we have. And oftentimes those will happen on a big pallet at the front of the store in the high traffic walkway.
Yeah, and we try to work with a lot of brands. We talked about that, is creating a corrugate that's out of department. I mean, the hard part is the music department's always in the back. Yeah. So they try to somebody walk all the way through the store, but you really want to be in that front high traffic area. And so we identify that and partner with beverage brands or different things like that they can we can share or coexist on a corrugate in some high traffic area, and we find that those really are a huge advantage for us, especially when we can get multiple titles onto that corrugate.
Indeed, and you mentioned, you know, the CD, let's say we're talking about Best Buy is in the back, those spaces are getting smaller. I mean, is there a certain, I mean, music is always going to be an important part of people's lives. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. But is it frustrating to see that so much of this music product is a loss leader? So it really isn't about selling the product, it's just used to kind of lure people in and maybe buy something that's pricier.
Sure. Well, and circulars in our industry are a huge driver. I mean, believe it or not, you know, mom's looking through the paper and she sees, you know, these albums on a circular. That's still a huge part of what drives people in. And I've been in Best Buy and I've seen it on the shelf for less than I know they paid me for it. So they're actually losing $1 every unit they sell just to try to drive somebody in the store to buy a stereo. Which, you know, and we can't do anything about that. Is it our product used? I mean, online is no different. I mean, you know, some of these 99-cent deals and things on digital space, but we feel very strongly that our music has value, and we want it sold at the highest possible price, just so that we don't program an entire generation to think that music doesn't have value, because they're willing to pay for it, but if they can get it for free, who wouldn't? You know.
The problem is we're beholden to retailers who really aren't in the business of entertainment, because they can make a much higher profit margin on other commoditized products. So,
right.
But they use the sexy appeal and credibility of our product. Yeah.
But our artist is on the commercial, and they
there's that
drives them to the store, and then they sell them something else.
Indeed. And speaking about, you know, trying to instill that idea of value, right, in this generation of digital music, of free music, I think a big part of that, as far as I'm concerned, is adding value to some of these physical products. If you don't mind, if you could give us some examples of ways that you've done that. One thing that I've noticed recently was in 1989, you had might have been one of the deluxe versions that had the Polaroids in them. On the Frozen side, I remember seeing I think it was a 7-inch color disc. So it was a full color disc that was available at your little mom and pop record store.
Yeah.
If you don't mind giving us some examples of ways that you add value to the product.
Well, I think the 1989 is a perfect example. I mean, Taylor's team just took it out of the park with, you know, she's, you know, brilliant, and it's just amazing at some of the ideas that she comes up with, and that was 100% her concept and thought, is that, you know, she'd been taking some Polaroids at some of the photo shoots and things, and said, you know, this would be a great idea, and so the idea of having 13 sets of 10, or, you know, 10 sets of 13, you know, and having it so that each package had something a little different, and, you know, and it's the old version of, you know, there's 4 different album covers, and they need to collect all 4, but it's about creating value for the customer. You know, people want to own everything, and they want to have everything they can, and so you want to make it make a package that people really are proud of, and, you know, that. What we realize, and it's funny when you talk about licensing to other markets, where we license our product into the UK through Universal, and when they saw the cost structure of this product, they could not believe it. They were like, we can't make this. You know, can we make it with you know, can we just do it on paper instead of Polaroid? I said, no, you have to make it exactly like this. And they said, well, the margin's going to be horrible. And we're like, margin be damned. I mean, this is the product. This is what we're selling. Sell it for a higher price. And other markets are very driven by retail. Retail demands what the price is going to be. And we were very fortunate in our partnership with Target to be able to have a partner that saw the value in it, and really wanted this higher priced piece. And we, in fact, ultimately we included the photos even on the standard, just to make that a valuable piece. We felt like if somebody's going to buy an album as opposed to a single, then we need to make it as valuable as possible.
Right.
Yeah, I find myself in discussions with our team, and of course the finance team on one side looking at the P&L going, Souriall, you can't afford to do your foil embossed cover. And I'm like, this is our biggest animated tentpole film of the year. If we were ever to go out, we have this beautiful piece of artwork, the blue shimmery frost, like this is the one to do it. And so we often meet in the middle where, okay, we'll do it on the first 300,000 units.
And then you make a limited edition or
Right,
something.
exactly.
And it's another great driver.
Yeah. And we try and it's to your point, it's hard to make the mass retail price point work, so that's why we're starting to develop these more direct-to-consumer places where we can do nicer, more collectible. I mean, the vinyl market, which is a whole other discussion to get into, but we're seeing a new generation of kids who are discovering vinyl for the first time ever and are appreciating that tactile experience that we grew up with, that are taking it out, opening up the double gatefold, reading all the notes, putting it on, albeit their Crosley suitcase turntable that doesn't sound very good, right? Pulling the needle over, appreciating the pops and hisses, but it's a new badge of honor. Like, I think my son is a prime example of somebody who, my youngest son, consumes music through Spotify. So for his mass consumption and for discovering new things, he goes to playlists that he trusts. But when he hones in on something that he really likes, and he's like, I love this band. And for him right now, he's 16, but he's going through all the classic rock stuff and the Chili Peppers and Sublime. But you walk into his room and he has these albums and he's got them standing on his little desk area right next to his computer. And that's his badge of honor. So when his buddies come over, they're like, ooh, what's that? And he's like, Creedence Clearwater Revival.
I have a 14-year-old with the Black Sabbath.
There you go. Okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. And how much of this do you think is, or how important is scarcity? Because clearly when you see that record, you know that it has not been mass produced. How much of that is part of that badge of honor, knowing that, not everybody's going to have this, and inherently it becomes more valuable because there's less of it?
Well, that's just a market rule of marketing. It's scarcity equals demand, and I think the idea that in the digital world that there is no scarcity in digital is kind of crazy. I mean, we've spent a lot of time on YouTube actively hiring a team to pull down UGC off of YouTube, and you see all these tweets of people going, I can't find Taylor's record anywhere free. I guess I'm just going to have to buy it. And you're like, there's an idea, it's just, but I mean, the reality is you can create scarcity, and scarcity equals demand. I mean, there's a reason why Ferraris cost what they cost, and a Hyundai costs what it costs because there's a lot of them, and our music industry has been kind of put into this bucket because of price fixing and the concerns there that all music is priced the same and all music is equal in value. And I think it's not. There are some really great artists that should and need to demand a higher price point because they have more value. And then there's some newer artists that maybe want to give their music away so that people learn to appreciate it and then draw value from that, and then they want to support them. But as a music industry, we've not been able to have a say in that pricing. It's been pretty regimented because we're selling to a retailer who demands our price point, and it's used for a loss leader. So I think the direct consumer approach in this new era is going to give us a huge ability to really bring a lot of value back. And at that point, let's create some really great formats. That's one of the really interesting things is that we're how many years into this, and digital doesn't have a multimedia format. There's no a multimedia format on your mobile device, or especially with the iPad. What an amazing device, or the tablet, to be able to consume not only the music but the visuals and the lyrics and all the things that go with that and the video. And we've not created a format that brings that all together into a standardized format where every tablet or every platform, and I hope we don't get into the format wars again where we have the Apple and the Windows and all the different ones, and they can all identify one standardized multimedia package that we could start to create even more amazing packages with our artists.
Indeed, and then ironically, in regard to the standardized price of zero on sites like Spotify, albeit legal.
Right.
If you don't mind, talk a little bit about maybe the future. You mentioned, possibly these multimedia formats. I think we've learned a lot, I hope, from the rock bands and the guitar heroes. People were paying premium dollar to engage, interact with, in some cases, music that's been around for decades and, enjoy it in a new way. I'm assuming there's room for that. Have there been experiments in that space that you could share? I don't know, maybe including augmented reality or some other, digital component to the visual, to the music?
Well, I think I think the app obviously it could potentially be the next phase of the record. The hard part is finding it, is bundling it in such a way that you don't have every single one of your albums being a different icon on your phone. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But it would be really interesting for there to be a delivery mechanism into a mobile device where these could be aggregated, and each album was interactive and was an app within an app approach. And I think there are some really amazing things you can do with artist apps as far as augmented reality, as far as location. They walk into a concert and who's at your concert based on your fan base, and you can really personalize that experience for them and deliver them content directly. So I think there's so much potential in this digital world for our artists. The key thing is just finding the right way to do it and finding the right audience, because I think our business model is still, when you look down and 60% of your consumers are really happy with a CD, you kind of need to not ignore that. You need to continue to do that and find ways that you can make those better. When our fan base gravitates towards digital and mobile a little bit more, I think those opportunities will be more of the approaches that we take.
Yeah, there's no denying. You look at just the platform of iTunes and their business right now, and what we're seeing is the download the business is shrinking rapidly, but the app business is on fire. Mm-hmm. So it's creating that magical application, and certain artists are more prone and poised to do something like that to get it started, yours being one of them, actually. But it's going to be interesting, and you raised the biggest point, which is the cross-platform functionality that's an issue.
Right.
Yeah.
It's right now the fortunate thing is that iTunes is the 800-pound gorilla. I mean, when we look down at our accounts that we do all our business with, there's really 4 or 5 that count. There's iTunes is the number one. There's
Same with
Target, Walmart, and then the rest of them are just make up the last 2%. So I mean, that's the hard part, is that it's so front loaded, and so we really have to focus our efforts where people are telling us that they're consuming music. Unfortunately, YouTube and Spotify just don't even show up on our radar from an income source. So we apply less, attention to it.
Right. Little different on our side of the business. We are embracing the concept just because the data is showing us that this is what's happening, and it's happening fast. So we talk about this access over ownership model right now, which is consumers want what they want, when they want it, wherever they are, on any device, at a reasonable price. And without divulging actual revenue financials, we've seen this streaming space grow twofold every year for the past 3 years in a row. And 15 right now is on track to double again. And it's not the lion's share of our revenue, but it's coming on fast. So it really becomes sort of this is the paradigm shift of a youthful generation thinking about music consumption in a way that my generation grew up with cable television, where I'm used to spending $100 a month to have access to everything. And there's certain territories in the world, like the Nordics, where Spotify originated from, where they're 85% of the music business right now. And it's a model, like I said, we got to get out of the freemium model into the premium faster than it's happening. I think Spotify made us as an industry some promises, and they haven't really kept up on par where they thought we would be. So that's a challenge we all have to focus on together to figure that out. But I'd be curious, in the room here, how many people use Spotify? Okay, so it's probably 80% of you at least. And I would guess Do most of you like the experience? I got to say, like most people, if you talk to them and say, just try it, and you get them into the ecosystem, most people like it. I think what's interesting right now, and this is when iTunes comes with their next evolution, the thing with Spotify is like everything's there, and other than their certain curated playlists, sometimes you go there and you're like, okay, I have access to everything. What do I want to listen to? Sometimes you want to be programmed to, and I think that's probably some writing on the wall of what iTunes is going to roll out, is they're bringing in some key tastemakers that people respect, or I liked this DJ. I mean, it's basically the radio model, but there are times when you know exactly what you want to listen to, and so to be able to go anywhere on any device and type in and you get it, that's an awesome experience. But sometimes you kind of want to be surprised, or sometimes you want to hear something that sounds like something, but you want to hear something new.
Right. Of everybody that raised their hands, what percentage is premium subscriber?
Good question.
And who's a freemium? Gotcha.
I think
All right, now, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, now I have to ask a question. Let me see hands for anyone that bought in the last year a physical product, including a CD or vinyl record. Yeah, so I mean, it's not a sum-zero game, right?
Right.
I mean, we consume music in
that's-
different ways.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think that's actually an interesting observation. Again, to the point of, you can mass consume and go to platforms like that, whether it's Rdio or Spotify or even YouTube. I mean, I guess that's the other thing on our side of the business. In the world of YouTube now, we are claiming our content. And so Frozen is a really amazing example that has opened up this new frontier that honestly, we don't even know how to forecast around this. But as an example, the one song, Let It Go, I'm sorry to say that, I know you're sick of hearing it.
Would you sing it?
The one song, Let It Go, we've identified over 80,000 UGC videos just from that one song. Now that's everything from the official videos that we've put out to a young girl and her cat dancing and just singing the song. But 80,000 of those videos, we are claiming either the master recording, which they ripped off a CD or something and put into their video, or just the composition itself, which we own and control, written by Bobby and Christina Lopez, tied to the project. So, and in this case, clearly the UGC behind Frozen is a lot of what helped it turn into this massive pop culture phenomenon.
Sure.
So it's just an interesting, another side of our business that is finally being legitimized. We used to be, we'd want to chase people down and go, take that down, you can't do that. Right. Now it's like, honestly, many of my products now, like I've got a lot of Disney Channel things. I got 2 big projects coming this summer, and we've learned from a couple of our prior projects to put a couple instrumental tracks as part of the physical CD, because kids love this content, they soak it in, they engage with it on television, they want to sing and dance to it, and they want to make their own videos. It's such a world of young content creators anywhere and everywhere these days. So for us to give them a tool that might encourage that, because we're going to be able to claim that on the back end, starts to make sense for us.
Indeed.
And they help spread it virally to all of their friends. And
it's
their
promotion
yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that Taylor Swift doesn't have any shortage of folks.
Shake It Off would, Shake It Off, the first single. We've not dealt with a lot of the UGC on that. It's out there. I think, but one of the key things is just a sense of there are some great. And we haven't blocked UGC. That's why we've manually done a lot of that, because there are some great UGC out there that just is funny. It's great. It's a right, but you don't always want to lend your music to everything.
Sure.
And I think that's one of the real difficult things is that when you see how the music gets used, sometimes you don't want it in that context. Sure. And so we want to reserve the right to go, you know what, you're not going to use it for that, or you're not going to do that, and put it in a light that it doesn't hold up for us. So we don't have thousands of titles. We have 10 really important, or 12 really important titles for our company. So it also allows us to really focus on those and spend a lot more time trying to maximize those revenue streams. Our goal isn't to be all things to all people. Our goal is to, it's not a McDonald's strategy, it's a Ferrari strategy. We want to be very specific and find consumers that love our brands and want to buy our brands. And if we can grow those brands, great. But it's not, we're not a corporate America where we're trying to meet a 30% margin gain every year and run by that. So we just want to reinvest in ourselves and potentially have that consistent creative community.
Gotcha. And you were talking about iTunes and obviously the inevitable that it will be pretty significant streaming platform, whatever it's called, in the very near future. I'm curious, what were your thoughts, if you don't mind sharing, on the U2 promotion that they did with iTunes, where essentially they took this place that everybody pretty much agreed is the place to buy digital music. So in other words, this was, you could get free music everywhere online. That was the one de facto place where you go to get paid music, and they use it as a promotion to give away music. Any thoughts on that either way? I mean, was that the death knell of the beginning of the end, or? I
don't know. I've seen quite a few articles on both sides.
Yeah,
and I think our initial reaction was, I've been kind of, my space has been,
Yes.
even if I don't want this record on my, in my library, it is now. How do I, but the backside of it is some of the data that's coming back is the amount of people that were exposed to the music and have actually played the music. I'd say it worked. The flip side is that, from a public standpoint, the perception was it was free. But it wasn't.
Right, sure.
They were paid for it.
Yeah,
right.
It was just a marketing approach. But I think we're still of the mindset that you're instilling a perception that music is free, and I could see both sides. I think it was a great marketing approach.
Right.
It took a band that wasn't really on everybody's radar at that moment, and it brought them right back into the forefront of everybody's psyche, and they have a new record coming that's probably not going to be there, and you're going to be more, they exposed that band to a ton of people that are more potentially apt to buy that next record. And
yeah, I commend Interscope. I mean, it was a bold, disruptive move, which as a marketer, I can appreciate, because sometimes it's so hard to stand out and cut through the clutter. But you said exactly what I was going to say, which is just that perception of something being free. It's not what we ever want to do.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we're battling a whole generation of kids still who, I think there's a new generation growing up to a new model, and the price point is much more fair, and we're going to get there. But I really think it's institutions like this, and even in high school and colleges, I think kids should all have to take a mandatory intellectual property rights class, just to really give them some backstory into what goes on. And when they, now that the pipelines are getting bigger into the houses and it's starting to happen with movies, that's where it gets really crazy. But there's a lot of artists that you might love who probably struggled for 15 years with not great living conditions until they finally got their one break at the right time, at the right place, and they suddenly hit and have become a star, and now you look at them and you think they're rolling in money and their life is good, and for you to steal their album, it's not going to hurt them at all. But again, there's a whole backstory that you don't know, and people work really hard, and it's a precedent-setting issue across all creative intellectual property rights.
Yeah, it's amazing the village that it takes to create an artist, and the public perception is that there's just that one artist, but it's that 100 people that are surrounding them that depend on that. I mean, they go on tour, they've got all these people, the riggers and and they've got producers and their families, and there's a ton of people at our record label. We've got 91 employees, 91 people that I take their livelihood very seriously, that I want to be able to make sure that I can provide them a job for a future, and that we can continue to do what we love. And so, and that doesn't happen without there being value there. I think the other really interesting thing is YouTube. I mean, somebody can take a song, a master recording, and sing to it, and it's very innocent. It's very it almost becomes their, I've heard it said, it's almost their right to create this content, and they're creating content, but yet on the same side, ABC calls me and says, hey, we want to use your master in a commercial. Here's a licensing fee, and do we have your permission? And we say, sure, we'd like to see the end product and where it's going to be put in the TV series or this, and make sure we have artistic approval to make sure that it's not over a certain scene that we don't want to do that. So there's all those creative controls that are in place because it is our music, it is the artist's music, and that concept that anybody would want that creative control or actually license that music is just out the window with that YouTube mentality, is that this is my right to make this, and this is my video, and it's like, well, it's all surrounded underneath this music. It started with the music, so. It's interesting to see light bulbs go off. To go, wow, you're right. I mean, some of our best. We make almost as much in licensing our music to legitimate content creators, and that's another great source of income for our artists.
I think a lot of kids too look at us as the record labels and think we're big corporate empires and we're greedy and evil, and that may have been the case 30 years ago before I was in the position. It's a very different business now, but the risk is on us up front. Like when you guys started with Taylor, when she was nobody, all of the muscle and the marketing dollars and everything, you took the risk. You went out and did it. And she could have failed. She didn't, that was your loss then.
Well, and that's the thing, is that there have been artists that haven't worked. Well, and I do have $1 million negative accounts on some artists that we've done a really good hard college try to make them connect, and for whatever reason there wasn't that ear to heart connection, and it just didn't engage. And despite our best efforts, they were amazing singers, they had amazing content, it just didn't connect. And so the successful artists help that us afford to do that for those other artists as well. And I think as the model grows, we're seeing the dynamic change a lot as to how artists are compensated. And what we always say, I mean, the hard part is that people look at what they're making from the music and go, artists are not getting paid fairly, but we always tell the artists that, if we do our job right, we're going to be the number 5 source of income for you. And they kind of look at us and they really, and said, yeah, your touring is going to be your number 1, then your endorsements, then your merchandise, then your publishing, and then the music. That's the order it's going to do. And the great thing is it starts with the music. And if the music grows and it puts butts in the seat at the tour. It allows the Diet Coke to come up and become, and say, hey, we want to use your music. And those dollar amounts are pretty astronomical. And those, I guess, those market caps in those silos are pretty astronomical compared to the music. So.
Indeed, awesome. I want to get to some student questions, but I have one more question, if you don't mind indulging me. If you're both seasoned veterans, but could you share one thing that you feel you learned personally from the success of these prospective releases?
Can I start?
You may.
The biggest eye-opening key learning from Frozen for me was a term that I have, actually a young intern from Berklee School of Music came in and interviewed with me, and he said this term, and I looked at him right when he said it, and I go, I'm stealing that term, dude. He said, glocalization, global localization. Part of the reason why Frozen has been such a massive, our official touting right now is 10 million albums, 15 million plus tracks, and 2 billion streams. Universal will tell us we're closer to 13 to 15 million albums because of streaming equivalent coming out of Southeast Asia and different territories. But what we learned is if you can take a great song and you can put it in local language so that it is not just a big Disney film which comes from the West from the US, but it is all of the great creative of that, but now it's put into local language in territory. And we had 78 different product SKUs across the globe for Frozen because of over 30 different localized languages. And so now the key learning there is all of my projects, some of them make sense, some of them don't, but anytime I can work with talent to localize the big song that we're using as a marketing hook in territory, we're doing that because that's what resonates. Disney means a lot to a lot of different people across the globe, some places more than others. But if you can take a song and it's in your native local language that you're used to, it's going to make it that much more easier to sell and succeed. So that was a huge key learning for us, and I could tell you examples of 3 different projects where we're doing that right now.
Awesome. And that's definitely something that's worthwhile reminding everyone it's a global business.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think that was the thing that really hit home with us, is that this 1989 was really the first record that had a global audience. And the music business is becoming a global industry. I mean, country music is very specific to United States, Canada, Australia, and then the markets just really tail off from there. But as you look, and your strategy is to be a global artist, she hit the nail on the head, and really was still 100% authentic with who she is. And it's not to say we weren't a little concerned that our normal path that we have with country radio and with a lot of things, we didn't have a product for them. We didn't have she moved to this to a pop artist, but it definitely helped from a global perspective, and that brand just continues to grow, and she truly is unstoppable, and I think everybody had some concern, saying, "Hey, are you going to lose your fan base?" And you see that if you change lanes, some people do it. But I think she's always done it so authentic with her identifying who her audience is, and they just follow with her. And it's great music. I mean, it's undeniably some of the best music that she's ever put out. I mean, Shake It Off alone, the videos and the redos, I mean, just has been a crazy connection with the world.
Indeed. Thank you so much. So let's go ahead and switch to a few questions, if you don't mind, here on campus and also online. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Laura, and I'm a media mobile development person, but I've also been interested in sound. My question is, if you're going into this sort of a business, what kinds of prerequisites do you look for when you're looking for people to hire?
Great question. Personally, for those of you who don't know me very well, but if I spoke here in the past, and I did kind of a deep dive on me, and creativity is my thing. And honestly, when I hire people, I look for people who are strategic and creative thinkers. Like, I think anyone can learn certain things. Some people are natural at certain things. I would rather have a young person come in that I could see is poised, is well-spoken, is not afraid to speak up, shows signs of creative thinking, that is going to come into my team, and my team is going to be able to help train them for what they're being hired for specifically. Obviously, coming out of a place like this, you're going to have a broad set of being exposed to whatever your specialty is. But oftentimes, it's not just the resume, which I see so many. The other side of the coin is at Disney especially, we get kids coming in, and their resume is like unbelievable. Like, you've done 14 internships in 2 years. How is this possible? But these kids they're sort of bred to be overachievers, and they go into these very quick little 2 months here, 2 months here, 2 months here. And yes, they got exposed to some great people and things, but did they really get in and focus and learn something? So it's a very long-winded answer, but and as my 3 sons will always attest, I'm a big proponent of preaching the ability to public speak. If you can comfortably public speak, whether it's a small room or a big room, whatever you want to do in life, it's going to make you better at succeeding at that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. While we're getting the mic around, I have an online question. How do artists earn money from top songs on compilation albums and those that reach the top of the Billboard chart, so the top 200 for albums?
On compilation records,
Yes.
like Wow or Now,
Right,
those,
yes.
they're paid a royalty. Essentially, we license the song. We typically hold our songs, our big singles, through the album cycle. A lot of the compilations will approach us right away and say, hey, this is the big song of the year. We want this on, then, Now 52 or whatever. But we hold it back probably for three cycles, Now cycles, and then if we license it, one of our biggest issues is the complexity of the streaming issue right now. Is that you used to be you'd license it on a compilation, it was physical only, or you'd be bundled on a download. So we would retain the single rights, and so if a single was sold, we would make all the income and pay the artist. Whereas, if you sell the compilation, you're getting a prorated, so there's 20 songs on it and they're going to pay an 18-point royalty. Well, it's 18 points prorated by 20 songs, so you're making a fraction of that. And it doesn't, they only want your biggest music, and so we've kind of retrenched from even lending our music to it lately.
It's a really interesting space. I have a kind of a great example. So Guardians of the Galaxy. So when we were presented with this project, you can imagine we're like, okay, we've got obviously a great Marvel movie and a director that chose to use music very methodically in the context of the film, which always helps us succeed. But here were all of these classic rock songs that I grew up with, that I loved way back in the late 70s and early 80s, and I'm like, how is this going to relate to a young audience? And then what you were just talking about is because we did not own this repertoire, we were putting out the soundtrack, but we did not have individual single streaming rights. And so in this, what's going on again with access over ownership, we're like, how are we going to make money off this? The irony is that the movie was great, and a new young generation of kids loved it. And the funny thing is, and it took a little bit through some research for us to figure this out, but none of you guys knew who 10cc or Rupert Holmes or Blue Swede. You didn't know the artists' names. You heard a song, and it sounded like a new song to you, and you're like, I like this song. But when you went to search for it, to find it online, what did you do? You just typed in Guardians of the Galaxy. And so what popped up? Our soundtrack. And rather than going through and trying to figure out, was it this one, was it this one, you just hit buy on the whole thing. And we've now sold 2.5 million units of that soundtrack worldwide. And honestly, it was a surprise to us. I mean, a pleasant surprise. And now, they're working on the next movie, and we already know the director is going to use the same strategy. There will be a mixtape volume 2 coming, but just really interesting.
So individual downloads helped in that.
Yeah, but I think what's going to happen, though,
downloads.
because what happened is, again, we as a studio, it's a big platform, so the studio marketing team used that Blue Swede song, Hooked on a Feeling, in all of their marketing muscle and trailers. Well, this guy was like asleep in a cabin in the middle of nowhere for the past 20 years, and all of a sudden his accountant's calling him going, dude, what's happening? Your song's blowing up. And so literally it brought back catalog sales from all of these artists. And so what it's done is it's made us look at the model and say, hey, when we do this next one, and everyone's going to start pushing this question, but it's like there's probably a new business proposition, because I could look at, let's just say it's Universal who owned most of those copyrights, and I could say, look, I'm going to put the paddles, cha-ching, and bring your catalog back to life, and if I'm going to take the risk and do that, I should get a little piece of that. Absolutely. And I think we're going to all start angling to negotiate that way as we continue to figure out how to harness this new streaming side of the business.
Awesome. I personally, I just got a kick out of seeing my son try to figure out how to play the cassette. That was...
Yes, right.
Questions? Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Cassie. I just graduated from the EBMS program. I wanted to talk intangibles with you for a second, specifically with Taylor. Going into the 1989 release, there was all of a sudden this influx of just great social media interaction, the Taylorking, Swiftmas, and the listening parties. Can you discuss a little bit of the process behind developing these elements and kind of how they all kind of fell into place and came together?
It was all in her head. She came up with all of it. She's her she uses social media as a connection to her fans, and it allows fans to kind of view or get a sense of who she is and what she does. And all I can say is that all of that is that's just Taylor on a day-to-day basis. I mean, the reality is that she went dark for a while because she was creating a record and wasn't on tour. But part of Taylor being Taylor is all of those things. It's an amazing thing to have such an amazing artist that really does know who they are, knows how to connect with an audience, and truly does those extra things that make that audience feel special. So, and she's, you probably all know, but I mean, when we originally started with Taylor, she didn't have a management company. So the typical thing is you're going to go get a publisher and a manager and a business manager. And early on, Scott kind of just, the head of our label, Scott Borchetta, basically served that role and more of a consultant. And then over time, she decided to build an entire team around her as opposed to plugging into an existing management company. And then she's done that on every piece of her business, which has just been amazing. I mean, she's got her own merch company, her own touring company, her own, her online and her community, her fan community, and the things that she does charitably and all those other things. I mean, it all works. It's almost like karma, It's like if you do these great, wonderful things, it will come back to you. And so, those kind of things are things that we kind of see, and I mean, it's not something you can duplicate. She truly is just out on her own, and I mean, she's the biggest selling artist in the world, and she really, but she really has that connection with her fan base. So there'll be more of those. I mean, it's pretty astounding the things on a day-to-day basis that come our way. It allows us to focus and try to keep up with some of our other artists, but there are some great concepts she's had. So yeah, but that was primarily all with her management team and her.
Awesome.
Okay. Hey, my name is Frank. First question: do you want to build a snowman?
No. Okay. I did it last week, actually.
All right. My real question is, so more and more, I'm starting to notice that in soundtracks, more and more, those are, when I was working at Target, I noticed that was the most high, like Frozen and the Guardians of the Galaxy, those soundtracks are starting to sell a lot more regular than an individual artist's album. Do you ever think that soundtracks are going to be like the more in-demand item rather than an individual artist's album? Like, do you think we'll have like collaborating artists that would just be like, hey, why don't we get Taylor Swift? We'll get this person to collide on this soundtrack for the movie.
Well, you're right, and it's a good observation that the compilations are having a bit of a comeback right now. Yeah, I mean, just between Frozen and Guardians for a moment there, we were almost over 50% market share in the soundtrack space, but now Empire just came out today on top of the Billboard Top 200, which is building a lot of fire and steam. And then the 50 Shades of Grey was another one in the past couple of weeks that's been selling really, really well. I think soundtracks are cyclical. I mean, we of course put them out nonstop, but we have decades that are super strong, and then they kind of dwindle and they go down. I mean, prior to Frozen, things were down. I mean, some of our core business where we might have traditionally sold 1 million units, we're selling 500,000 units, which in today's soundtrack market is still really strong. And to your point about artists coming together, I mean, I do think we're going to see a trend of less albums being dropped on a regular cycle and smaller chunks of content coming out, just not with the superstar artists like Taylor or somebody of that caliber, but new artists. Even we're doing it on the Hollywood record side of our business. We'll put out a series of singles, and if we're not building traction, if we don't feel like we're there yet, there's no use in putting out a full album if it's just going to sit there and not sell. But the idea of an artist super serving their fan base with a regular frequency of content coming is something that I think is going to become more of a trend. As a label, of course, we make more margin on selling a full album, so we ultimately want to get there. You could speak to the fact of if Taylor would ever talk to Demi Lovato and say, "Hey, let's work together and put an album, a compilation out together."
We did the Valentine's Day soundtrack with the single from Taylor when she was in that movie, and you know, the hard part is the movie has to be great. I mean, that's the driver of the soundtrack is that if the movie has that huge expanded audience and the musical director captures people's, you know, I guess, passion about that music and how that music made them feel, they'll buy the soundtrack to relive how they felt. So it's not necessarily something that you can contrive and do. It's something that just kind of has to, it starts with the movie. And in that space, I think a lot of it starts with the movie and the songs that you put into there. So, you know, I think that's really difficult for us. I mean, I still think individual artists are going to have a very, you know, specific need, but I mean, a movie is a movie. I mean,
platform.
And is a platform, and a movie, you know, lifts all boats.
Sometimes a film can be like, did you see 50 Shades of Grey?
I did not.
I mean, the music is really good. There's some great songs, The Weeknd and the Ellie Goulding track, but that's what's driving that, because I don't think, anyone see that film? Anyone love that film? Let me put it that way. That's because you read all 3 books 4 times over, right? Embarrassingly enough, I took my wife to see that film at midnight on opening day for Valentine's Day. I didn't think the film was great, but I did like how they used music. And to your point, it really is about how a director combines the sonic piece of music against film, which makes things, and that's why Guardians works so well.
Yeah, we've had music in a lot of films, and it just hasn't connected. So, yeah, it depends on the quality of the film.
Is the mic over there?
My question is, as far as Taylor, do you have any plans to put her music back on Spotify or any future music? And if not, or under what criteria would you do it? And if not, do you feel it would cause any future harm?
I think you know the idea or the concept was to window the release on Spotify. The hard part with Spotify is Spotify essentially removed her music from the service because we gave them the option to do premium only or versus ad supported, and they said no. So. There are a lot of services out there in the streaming space that are in the interactive streaming space that are willing to you know, allow us to choose between freemium and premium. So I think, you know, eventually it will be on some of the premium services. This album cycle, however, has a lot longer tail on it as far as the monetization strategy that we have, and it's still selling extremely well. But yeah, it will eventually be on interactive streaming, but probably in premium only.
We have a question over here.
Hi, my name is Ariana Lanzon. My question is for Rob. How does Disney Music Group do they target such a big market and still do it in a right and efficient way?
I'm sorry, say that again. How do
you target such a big market and still doing it in a right?
How do we target such a big market and do it in an efficient way? Well, again, I have to caveat that I have tremendous, talented partners who, number one, make amazing films that are master storytellers. And so, you know, our studio is just on fire these days right now. From all of our animated films to Cinderella just opened up and dominated the box office this past weekend, a beautiful film, and working on this little thing called Star Wars: A Force Awakens coming in December. So, you know, I'm in a very fortunate position to work on the music, you know, surrounded by talented composers, conductors, songwriters, A&R execs, a studio marketing machine that is just so powerful. And we work closely with all of our different brethren in the company, from the studio marketing team to Radio Disney to Disney Channel, Disney Junior, Disney XD, ABC Family, ABC, ESPN, the parks, our consumer products division. I mean, we got a lot of infrastructure in place that helps us take something and really open it up in a broad way to a lot of different markets. And most of our entertainment is very mainstream and broad-based. So we do a lot of research as a company, though, and so we share a lot of research, not only from the music side, but from the film side, which helps us look at an audience and what is the strongest sector that this film or this property is going to appeal to, and that will make some impact on our marketing decisions on how we spend our money more efficiently and wiser. I don't know if that really answers the question, but I could probably talk for 2 hours on that.
Indeed. I think Disney owns the world now.
Yeah, they have a lot of pans in the fire.
Well, I want to thank you. Please join me in thanking our wonderful guests, Andrew and Rob. Thank you so much for imparting so much knowledge and sharing your expertise. It was phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciate that. And thanks, everyone, for attending. And I'm sure I look forward to seeing you at all kinds of events all week. Have a great night.
All right. So if you guys could, just make sure you grab anything you brought with you, bags, sunglasses. Exits are just right behind you. We just kindly ask if you guys could move that direction. We got another session coming up. So, all right, don't forget anything, cell phones.
All right. Hi, my name's Israel Vasquitelli, and here we are at this Full Sail exclusive online moment. Let me say that again. We're not live, right? It's recorded, right? We hope not. Not. That's okay. That's what. All right. Hi, my name's Israel, and here we are on this exclusive Full Sail online moment. And I had a few questions on air. I should. Okay. Take three. Take three. I got it through so far. Hi, this is Israel, and here we are for this exclusive Full Sail on-air moment with our guests Rob and Andrew. And we have a couple of questions that were asked online, and I want to go ahead and pass those on. If you could tell me a little bit about whether or not we're in an environment where really it is about the single for a new artist.
For a new artist, I don't think it's about the single. I think it's about the content and the breadth of the talent, and it's really hard to narrow that down to a single. It really is about what's to follow that, because you're building a fan base that's going to expect new music coming, and if you only have a single, it's going to be a short-lived career.
Indeed, thank you.
I agree with that. I think it's in the pop space, it's kind of how you get off the ground. If you don't have something that really takes and builds traction, you're going to struggle to get booked on tours. And I agree with the artist development and the whole picture of what the artist is about, but I do think a lot of emphasis these days are put on getting that first big single out and really building traction with that.
Awesome. And I have one more question from one of our students online. They wanted to know if you had any suggestions for young artists that are trying to be discovered.
I get asked, I'm sure we both get asked this question a lot, and really what I always go to is don't try and be anything that you're not. Be yourself, be who you are. That's what an artist is all about. That's why this guy's Taylor Swift is a mega superstar, because she's just being who she is. And if you're trying to fit into a particular genre or a whole or a sound like somebody else, you're going to be looked at as just copying something else. And really what every label is looking for is that next new, fresh, innovative, real, genuine, credible, and you got to be yourself to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, gentlemen. All right. Thank you. Appreciate that.